All right, we're factoring these polynomials where we have a number, a coefficient for the x squared term, this leading coefficient, is not 1. It's something other than 1. These are the more difficult kind, but I think if you've done this in class, you feel like everybody seemed to get it. So let's do it. First thing you're going to do always is you're going to look at all three numbers, and here I'll underline them so you can just see them. The leading coefficient, the coefficient for the x term, and the constant term, and we're going to look at them all and say, is there anything we can divide them all evenly by? Now, there's a little hint for the answer, which is that there's two prime numbers, 2 and 13, and since they're different prime numbers, there's not going to be a common factor. So, and in fact, in these early ones, you're going to see that there's not a common factor. So, we don't have to worry about that part of it here. Well, we do. We need to worry about it. There's just nothing to factor out. So, what will we do? We will then start our typical method, which is to do this. We're going to take our leading coefficient of 2 and our constant of 6 and multiply them together. Essentially, let me type it out over here, or just write it out up here, up top. You're seeing these in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, okay? Where that letter a is the x squared coefficient, and c is the constant term, and we're going to multiply a and c together. So a times c, 2 times 6, is 12. So we're going to write 12 over here on the side, and we're going to factor 12 into all the ways that you can make 12. Okay. Now notice that this is a positive 6 here at the end. Okay. That's going to tell us that we want the same sign on both of these. Okay. So we've got either 1 times 12. Can we do 2 times anything? Yes. 2 times, if we double this to 2, and we can take half of this and it's still a whole number, 6. Okay. Can we do 3 times anything? Well, yeah, actually, because notice using that same rule but kind of backwards, we can take half of 6, which is 3, and then we just double 2, and we get 4. Now, you might know those numbers already, how that factors, but it's just a way of saying, I can come up with these numbers. If it's a bigger number and I'm not sure exactly what to do, I can use some of the tricks. So notice that we met in the middle. This 3 and the 4, there's no numbers in between them. So this is getting higher, this is getting lower until we've met in the middle. So we've already checked all the numbers. Anything that would use numbers higher than this 3 would be repeating numbers over here. Okay. So since this number, you can see with the arrow over here pointing to that positive number, since that number is positive, we are going to, just like that plus for positive says, we're going to add two numbers from our list over here together to try and get 13. What two numbers add to 13? Okay, well, 1 and 12. Okay, those are the numbers we want to use. I'll circle them. And then this is what we do. This is what we do. We write the first term still the same, 2x squared. And then for this middle term, instead of writing 13x, we're going to write the two numbers that we found, 1 and 12. We're going to say 1x, or just x, plus 12x. That's the 1 and the 12 that we just found on the list. Okay, 1 and 12 go together to be the 13 that they originally gave us. So all we're doing is we're breaking that apart into, say, I'm going to split 13x into one of the x's here and 12 of the x's here. Okay, and then the last number again, the constant, 6. We write that there. Okay, so what we did is we used a and c, these two numbers here and here, multiplied them together and found a set that adds to b, and we split b apart into the set we found. Okay. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to rewrite this 2x squared plus x plus 12x plus 6. I'm rewriting it just so you can see what we had originally got. Now we're going to group them. We're going to group this and this, the first two terms together, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, what can we factor out? What can we factor out of that first set of parentheses? That 2x squared and the x, they both contain an x. We can pull an x out front of both of them. X, and if we divided each term inside by x, 2x squared divided by x is 2x. and x divided by x is 1. So we get 2x plus 1 times x is the same as what's up there. Okay? We factored out that x. Now we say plus. Now what can we factor out of this? 12x and 6. The biggest number we can pull out of both of those is 6. And there's no x in both of them, so we're just going to get a 6 out. Okay? And when we divide 12x by 6, we get 2x. And when we divide 6 by 6, we get 1. Now notice here, we've got in parentheses, we were left with 2x plus 1, and here we were left with 2x plus 1. That's what we want to see to know we're doing it right. Okay? So then we've got that second polynomial. Let me just write this here. This second polynomial is what we got inside. We got 2x plus 1 on both of those. And move that closer. And what do we get for the first one? Well, we get this x going there, and this plus 6, the thing we factored out of each one, becomes the two different terms. And now it's factored. So our answer then is x plus 6 times 2x plus 1. I'll write it down at the bottom. And of course, you should check just to see that you got, if you FOIL it back together, you get the original thing. So let's just do that and check. We could say first times first. We've got, that gives us 2x squared. Outer, x times 1, x. Inner, 6 times 2x is 12x. And last, 6 times 1 is 6. And you can see that these two terms would go together to be 13x. And that is what we had up top, 2x squared plus 13x plus 6. So we have then as our final answer, and let me remove all of those marks just to show you what we've got as final answer. I'll box it out. That is our final answer. Okay, we're going to move through the next ones a little bit quicker than that. That's the basic idea. So let's do this one a little bit faster. We're going to take our a and c terms. Those are 4 and 3, and multiply them together. And what we get is 12. And if we list the factors of 12, we say, oops, 1 times 12. We've done this before. 2 times 6, 3 times 4. And once you learn the factors and you get good at that, then you don't have to belabor the effort there. Okay. Now notice this. They are the same sign. We know that because this right here, this sign right here, is positive, and that's saying that we multiplied the same type of number together, either positive times positive or negative times negative. And then this that I'm pointing to in blue right here is what they both are. Okay, so they're both going to be negative numbers. So what two negative numbers will add to -8 from our list over here? Okay, since we know they're both negative, I can just drop negatives in there, so you know that we know they're both going to be negative. So it'll be -1 times -12, or -2 times -6, or -3 times -4 to get our number there. And then which two add to -8? Well, these two add to -8. Okay, so we just rewrite our original polynomial again, 4n squared, except for instead of 8n, we're going to break it up into the two things that we got here circled in pink, which is -2n and -6n. And we just break it into two pieces. -2n and -6n. Sorry, my pen is writing funny. I don't have my regular pen with me. And then we keep our last term the same, just like we kept the first term the same at 3. It's just the middle gets broken into 2. Now we're going to group them. Now we're going to group them like this. This and this, this and this. Okay. And what can we factor out of each one? Well, for the first one, we can factor out a 2. The 4 and the 2 both can factor out a 2. And we can factor out an n. Okay? And then what do we have left inside? Well, 4n squared divided by 2n is 2n. And minus 2n divided by 2n is 1, minus 1. Okay? Now, what can we factor out of these second two? We can factor out a positive 3. Okay? Actually, we can, since this leading term is negative, see this leading term is negative, always let's factor that negative out to make that number positive. Okay? So we'll always say if that first one's negative, we're going to pull a negative out. So let's divide out, we can pull out a negative, and we can divide them both by 3. And then we say, okay, what's left? Well, if we divide negative 6n by negative 3, we get 2n. And if we divide 3 by negative 3, we get negative 1. Yeah? And then notice that we get inside the parentheses, we get the same thing twice, 2n minus 1 and 2n minus 1. So when we're setting up our parentheses, what is outside the parentheses, the 2n from the first one, and the negative 3 from the second one, coming from here and here, become that first term. And then what's the last term? It's the thing that we got in both of those parentheses, 2n minus 1. Okay? So we've got 2n minus 3 times 2n minus 1. And you can check to factor it back together. I'm going to leave that to you. Actually, I'll show you. I'll do this one last bit. Just do it really fast. Okay? 2n times 2n, 4n squared. 2n times negative 1, negative 2n. Negative 3 times 2n, negative 6n. Negative 2n and negative 6n is negative 8n. And then negative 3 times negative 1, positive 3. So it goes back together correctly. And I will box that answer because that's what we want to have as our final factored answer. Now let's do this last one. One thing I forgot to do on that second one, I knew that it didn't, but I forgot to have you do it, is to check these three numbers. Let's just check 6, negative 23, and 20 for any common factors. 6 you can divide by 2 or 3 or 6, but 23 is prime. So the only thing you're going to be able to divide that by is 23. And since 6 doesn't divide by 23, they only have like a common factor of 1. So we're not going to be able to pull something out before we start splitting it apart. Because sometimes you'll see later, there's a number you can pull out first to get a simpler trinomial. Okay. So what are we going to do? We're going to multiply a times c. What is a and what is c? A is 6, c is 20. So we get 120. Okay, now before we start, let's look at our goal. We're looking for, since this number here is a positive number, we know we must have either multiplied positive times positive or negative times negative. And then this number here tells us what they both are. They should both be negatives. So we're going to come up with two negatives that multiply to 120. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our numbers that we're writing are both negative numbers. So how do we start that out? We start that out by saying, well, we can do negative 1 times negative 120. Okay? And since they're both the same, we're going to add them together. We're going to add them together to be the negative 23. So once you find it, you don't have to keep going. You can just, once you find your pair of numbers, you can stop there. But we haven't found it yet, so let's keep going. Negative 2 times negative 60. Negative 3 times negative 40. Negative 4 times, and remember what my rule is here. If you can double this number to get what you're looking for, we're looking for negative 4, we can double that to negative 4 and take half of that, and it's still a whole number. That'll be your other number. And if we're adding them together, we've got, let's see, for the first one, we've got negative 121, nope. Negative 62, nope. Negative 43, nope. Negative 34, nope. Let's keep going. Can we do 5 times anything? Yeah, actually, it ends in 0 or 5, so we can do negative 5 times negative 24. Those add up to negative 29, still not what we're looking for. What about negative 6? Well, can I double this to negative 6? Yes. And can I take half of that? Yes, I can. It's still a whole number, so negative 6 times negative 20. And you can see that still, that adds up to negative 26. We're not there yet, but we're getting closer. This is 121, very far from this. 62, negative 62, closer. Negative 43, closer. Negative 34, closer. We're getting closer and closer. Now we're at negative 26. We're probably close. Okay, let's keep going. Negative 7 times anything? No, that's not a multiple of 7, and you could just check it if you wanted to. 120 divided by 7. 7 goes into that once. And what's left is 50. I know that 7 doesn't go into 50 exactly, so it's not going to work. So I don't even need to finish. Okay. 8 times anything? Well, let's use our trick again. We're going to double this to negative 8. And yeah, we can take half of that and still have a whole number. So we can go negative 8 times what's half of negative 30 is negative 15. Those do multiply together to be negative 120, or to positive 120, and they add together. Look, they add together to be negative 23. So that took a little bit, but we found it. And by the way, as you get better and better at coming up with the factors of a number, it goes faster and faster. So this is where just if you try and avoid doing the work for some reason, then you're not getting that practice that makes you go faster and faster each time. So you really want to just do it, right? You got to get the practice in before you start to get fast and good at it. So those are the two numbers we're looking for. So here's our now method now that we identified it. We keep the first term the same, 6r squared, right? That just, let me erase this. That comes straight down, 6r squared. The negative 23r is going to break up into negative 8r and negative 15r, the two numbers that we just found on the right-hand side that I circled in pink. And then finally, our last term stays the same. Okay? All we've done after multiplying a and c together and finding the factors that add together to our middle term, we split that into two pieces, and it's still equal to the same thing. Now what we're going to do, and hopefully you're on to what we're doing, and this is going fast for you, we're going to group these together, and we're going to group these together. Okay? So then we look at the first parentheses and we say, what can we factor out? We can factor out from the 6 and the 8, we can factor out a 2, and they can each give us an r. So we can factor 2r out of there. And what's left? Well, if we divide 6r squared by 2r, we get 3r. And if we divide negative 8r by 2r, we get negative 4. Okay? Now, remember what I said. If this term right here, this term, the higher term is negative, we're going to pull out a negative. So we can divide these both by negative, and then what's the number we can divide them by? 15 and 20 can be divided by 5. And then what's left? Well, if we divide negative 15r by negative 5, we get 3r. And if we divide positive 20 by negative 5, okay. And then as we said, you can see that we've got 3r minus 4 inside both of those. That's great, because that's what we want to get. So what do we have? We have, for our first one, we have 2r, what was factored out of the first pair, and minus 5, what was factored out of the second pair. And then that times what we got inside both times, 3r minus 4. You should check to make sure that they go together correctly by foiling it back together. I'm going to let you do that because that's your job. That's how you do it.